Thou must bright dust way the path of justice and way thy judgments, Yahweh, we have waited for thee. The longing of our soul is to thy name and to the remembrance of thee. Yea, with my soul have I desired thee in the night. Yea, with my spirit within me I will seek thee early. For when thy judgments are in the earth, the inhabitants of the world will learn righteousness.
Let favor be shown to the wicked, yes, he will not learn righteousness. Stay in the land of the...
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today in the book of Genesis, chapter 8. We're going to pick it up at verse 14, but we're going to read the whole chapter here to begin. And God remembered Noah and every living thing, and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. The fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. And the waters returned from off the earth continually. And after the end of 150 days the waters were abated. And the ark rested in the 7th month on the 17th day of the month upon the mountains of Ararat. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. And it came to pass, at the end of 40 days, that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent forth a raven which went forth to and fro, until the waters were dried up from off the earth. Also he sent forth a dove from him, to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her, and pulled her in unto him into the ark. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came into him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. And he stayed yet other 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him any more. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the 1st month, in the 1st day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And in the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, was the earth dried. And God spake unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark, thou and thy wife, and thy sons wives with thee. Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee, of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth. And Noah went forth, and his sons and his wife, and his sons' wives with him. And every beast, every creeping thing, and every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth, after their kinds went forth out of the ark. And Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast, and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings upon the altar. No, wait, I must have gotten the wrong verse starting. Well, how did I get that wrong? For some reason, I got to verse 14. I'm like, that's where we left off. No, we're at chapter 9, aren't we? That's great. Well, let's just continue reading. We'll pick up our commentary at verse 1. Because now I remember very clearly going over this, and I think it's because of what had happened is I reread this morning, and I felt like there was more to say here in the middle. And then I thought, I should have said something more there. But I'll say what I have to say, and then we'll move on to chapter 9. And took of every clean beast and every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing, as I have done. While the earth remaineth seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. So I forget those ands. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you. Even as the green herb I have given you all things. But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat. And surely your blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will I require it. And at the hand of man, at the hand of every man's brother will I require it. Require the life of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man. And you, be you fruitful and multiply. Bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply therein. And God spake unto Noah and to his sons with him, saying, And I, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you, and with every living creature that is with you, of the fowl, of the cattle, and of every beast of the earth with you, from all that go out of the ark to every beast of the earth, and I will establish my covenant with you. Neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood, neither shall there be any more a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, This is the token of the covenant, which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of the covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you, and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, This is the token of the covenant, which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. And the sons of Noah that went forth out of the ark were Shem, and Ham, and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. And Noah began to be an husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine, and was drunken. And he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told two of his brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward, and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. Then we get to chapter 10. All right. So it's funny because I had in my mind, I'm like, okay, we're starting a new chapter. Then I looked at chapter 8 just to double check. And I was thinking about these days in particular. I don't know. In some way, it's funny because I will say on one hand that I wonder about some of these dates, or I wonder if what we do with the numbers is just add them up in a row. One of the things that I find interesting is when I was researching just a little bit, because I don't like getting into this stuff, and this is going to be brief. But when I was researching the Septuagint differences between the Masoretic texts, and right now I can't explain mathematically how it works out, but somehow it seemed to me the impression I got was that in the Septuagint, the way that the years are arranged, Lamech ends up living through the flood, or was it Methuselah? I forgot. One of the antediluvian patriarchs has a lifespan that extends beyond the flood. At least if one takes that whole thing and assumes one takes all those lifespans and adds them together, because the father-son relationships are direct father-son relationships and not perhaps line relationships. Like I said, there could, like if there were gaps, meaning his lifespan, because I do think that the lifespans are interesting and they're remarkable, and that on some level the fantastic length of them to me says they're probably true, meaning they're supposed to be long. The Masoretic text, in shortening them, it seems to me like it's trying to fix something that they're uncomfortable with. You know what I mean? Like they're taking 100 years, and maybe it's not intentional, or maybe it, like I said, it starts off in the margin, and then someone begins to question: is the marginal reading the original reading, and this is the old one? And you know, I mean, and over the centuries, that can be a question. In fact, to these days, to these very days, there are certain texts that people wrestle over whether they actually belong or whether they were marginal readings that crept into the text. All right, but like I said, if there were gaps in the genealogy, though it seems gapless to us, but perhaps linguistically the way we're reading it is just not the way it's intended. But even then, perhaps even the ancient Hebrews, not understanding the ancient sources from which these things come, which the antediluvian fathers, I mean, if you think about it, Noah's account is pre-Tower of Babel. And this month-day thing, I'm like, that has to come right from Noah. You know what I mean? That has to come right from Noah. A lot of this reminds me of the kind of thing, in the way it's written, the way it would be put into some sort of oral tradition to memorialize what had happened. Because the Noah story, in my mind, if it's true, it comes from nowhere else but Noah, as far as like the human side of it. The idea that God would tell all that detail to someone after, like hundreds of years later, seems odd to me. Most of the Bible was written at the time it is related. You know what I mean? Like the books of Kings, all that writing, a lot of that seems like blow by blow, written within, as the Gospels, maybe not at the same time, but within a generation of the events, as one would expect of history. You don't write about historic events that happened 400 years ago without some source. You have to have a source. Otherwise, you're just making it up, and it's not going to be plausible to other scholars and stuff, because these things don't happen. I mean, when books just come out of, oh, look, I magically found a book, those things usually get kind of sniffed out. The origins of these things, you know, that's how I take it anyways. It's like that there's an oral history that comes from Noah, perhaps even written. I don't know. There's no mention of writing. People don't think humans wrote before a certain time, but I think that is perhaps overly presumptive. Because writing is uncommon among people even to this day. Their illiteracy is a deep issue going on with humanity. Just because you look at primitive societies and say, well, they don't write, that doesn't mean that 20,000 years ago men couldn't, if men were around 20,000 years ago. And given so much time and given the image of God in us, what would men get up to? Like I said, the antediluvian period is such a dark, mysterious period. All right, so we already covered the talk about the altar. That was the primary subject at the end of the study, and the reason we carried on so long. Boy, my fan's really starting to make noise. One moment. Oh, but I can keep talking. I don't have to actually mute that. I'm just going to, so I can stand up, I'm going to go off screen. So we're going to look at chapter 9 here. Oh, let me just touch the fan. Okay. My grandmother always tried to get me to stop touching the fan, but I never was able to see the danger in it. Probably because we grew up in an era of safety fans. And my grandmother grew up in a day when the fans had steel blades and they didn't stop turning when you stuck your finger in them. You know. And her father had lost a limb, so she wasn't particularly, didn't like seeing me put my finger into machinery. Anyways, so God blesses Noah and his sons. They come out of the ark. Be fruitful and multiply. replenish the earth. Again, fill. But here again, we have to refill. So again, fill and refill. And that word in Hebrew means the same thing. It's just, now the English has a more meaning of again, but at the Hebrew level, it's just going to mean fill the earth. Fill the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you should be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air. Now, I don't know if this is entirely new. As far as because from the beginning, God kills, we assume, or provides skins, and Abel is a keeper of sheep, offering of the firstlings of his flock. The fear and dread upon every beast of the earth. Again, I think this is probably just simply referring to the fact of they'd just been living in an ark together for a year. And so the animals would have had to been subdued in some way. People have often commented on this, like they'd have to be put into a state of hibernation. In fact, I think some creation scientists or whatever, people who think deeply about. And I'll tell you what, there's not that kind. I don't consider that. That's not science. That's just like thinking about. We have to speculate. We have to speculate. That's all about how that might have gone. But this is a clue that perhaps, because the animals were to come unto them, which is unusual behavior for animals. If an animal comes to you, you usually need to get away from it because it's possibly rabid. When animals, as far as wild animals, I should say, obviously a domesticated animal is a different story. We're not going to talk about he's not talking about domesticated animals here. He's talking about the wild creatures. They are going to fear you. I think he's just saying this is going back to the way it was. Don't think they're just going to be, they're going to be fearful of you and hostile. That's also the other thing. Yeah, they will fear us, and also, as it says, the blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will I require it. At the hand of, you will be subject to being eaten by the animals. If they won't like you, they're not going to coexist peacefully with you. I will require your life at the hand of the beast. And so I don't know that these are necessarily new laws, but we knew so little about what happened before the flood. This is a reiteration of what I would say are eternal truths. And now murder is spelled out quite plainly, that the consequence for that is you will die. I require your blood. And he connects it to what we eat. And it's the beginning of a legal framework, where there are specific commands that go beyond just be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and follow your conscience. Or so, this seems to be what it initially was. Well, the first, do not eat of the tree. Now you've eaten it. Well, you die. Now go out and eke out your living. The earth was already cursed. But in some measure, like I said, it's we become accustomed to it. Just like the snake itself, the serpent, the literal snake, does not seem a curse to the snake to be a belly-dwelling creature. In fact, it doesn't choke on dust because it is made to dwell down in the dust. Now, if you were newly put there and forced to go there, but you had been accustomed to ascending into heaven, and such thing, or thought that was maybe more your place, yes, it could be quite humiliating. I would lose my mind if my hands were cut off. I don't want to lose I would cope or whatever, but it would be a very, I have a lot of things I want to do with my hands, right? I don't want to be blinded. I don't want my tongue cut out. I don't want to, there are a lot of things, obviously nobody does, right? But some people do. And they live like that. They live armless and legless lives. And they adapt to it. It's not easy. But some people rise to it, others do not. You know, it's not. It is life is not an easy thing on any level, and that's the thing is that we call ourselves blessed, for so we are. Even in this cursed world, we are blessed. God still gives His rain. You know, there's an air of you can see the mercy in it, the sign of the rainbow, and we'll talk more about that when we get to it. Anyways, but so the first thing He's telling them is reminding them the animals are, I'm going to say, going back to the way they were. Because I'm assuming in the antediluvian period, the animals were aggressive to people just like they were afterwards. But only during the flood, when Noah was on the ark, would there have been this strange behavior where animals were suddenly passive and would come to the people and perhaps be hand-fed and all gentle. They have to go back. They're going to go back to being wild. That's what it seems to me. You know, I think that's the simplest explanation. The fear and the dread, because into your hand are they delivered. I give them to you. We have the superiority. We're at the top of the food chain. This is nothing. You know, this is pronounced and true. This is observational almost from our perspective. I remember reading this and thinking, well, that's right. You know, as far as it's just how it is. He has delivered them to us. And every living thing that liveth shall be food for you. Even as the green herb, I've given you all things. I'm a Gentile. Whatever comes later to Moses doesn't apply to me. Even later when I come back to the law, when I come to the God of Abraham, I come to Him through Jesus, not through the law. And I would never deign to go back to the law unless I should insult the Lord who has received me on the basis of faith. You know what I mean? But here we see at the very beginning. You know, one of the things Jesus pointed out was, when He talked about divorce, was how that at the beginning it was not so. That God did not intend for man to be divorced, but the two should become one flesh. That a man should leave his father and mother and should cleave unto his wife. And that was to be a lifelong bond. That was how God intended it. And this doesn't mean that you can't ruin that for yourself or choose badly or have circumstances or whatever. There's all kinds of things that go wrong in life. You know, I'm thankful to have a successful marriage, you know, in which I have the sense of a growing contentment and happiness over time. You know, it was rocky times in the past, mostly when we were youngest. We had our hardest times. Man, you know, there's ups and downs. I don't know when. Hardest times. Actually, mostly it was always good. You know, and if you put things in the proper perspective, you can see that in your life. But if you dwell on the negativity, you can seem like your life is filled with negativity. It's like the stupid thing I saw. There's this atheist promotion network, Pangburn Institute, right? And they had a part of the Jordan Peterson conversation where he was talking to Sam Harris, who I dislike deeply. And Peterson kind of sort of agrees that the Bible is full of barbaric nonsense, but he does it in a way he's just repeating what Harris is saying. The Bible is full of barbaric nonsense. And I think from a totally objective point of view, and I consider myself a person who tries to be honest with the Lord. If I thought his book was full of barbaric nonsense, I would tell him so. I don't think everything in the book has been related to in like the magical way that a lot of Christians try to explain it. Like I said, as if God himself wrote these things, and it wasn't Noah's account of this is when my boat landed. This is when the water covered the mountains and I saw it and the mountains were seen. Who saw them, God or Noah? Noah. Moses didn't. Moses never claimed to write this, and I don't see why he would. This is Noah's account, either verbally handed down by those, like it says, with you I make my covenant. I said, these are the heirs. We presume that Noah was the firstborn son, right? Why would we? It's funny because Cain was firstborn, but he didn't inherit. Neither did Abel, but one guy named Seth. And down the line, but for the rest of them, it was all firstborns, right? There's never any children born before or after, we presume. Because it seems like that. It seems pretty seamless in the text. Seems, you know. I don't, do you want to read into that? I don't like to. I'm very reluctant to. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, there are gaps. I don't know what to stick in the gaps. I can't do that. But to observe the possibility, yes. Yes. There are little gaps in our understanding. We know this. We see through a glass darkly. What God has revealed to us is not a complete revelation. Think about what the first 9 chapters covers thousands of years, no matter what you believe, right? Thousands of years. At least a couple thousand, right? Of the antediluvian period. Several generations of people living into their 900s. There was significant stuff going on. I mean, if you think about what the world looked like a few thousand years after the flood, as far as population and stuff, like supposedly, assuming it came from just the 8 souls on the ark. If that was so, I will admit the possibility of other. I think it almost is required. When I talk about local flood, I'm not talking about little floods either. I am talking about mountain-topping floods. As far as I think you must. Otherwise Noah's account would not even be honest. I think that is an honest account. That's how it all seemed to happen. That is how he perceived it. That I'm fine with. Absolutely. I feel comfortable on that ground. So everything, notice the food law. As Jesus said, marriage was to be between a man and a woman from the beginning. So also look at the law of the food. And this also comes out in the New Testament, by the way, right? When it says, look at, when the question came up, what do the Gentiles have to do? It's almost like they went back here to look. Abstain from fornication and from eating things sacrificed to idols, which is essentially idolatry. I think that Paul later on tackles the question of the meat itself. If the meat itself is being sold somewhere and it's not clear where it came from. Well, Paul's point is like, well, truthfully, none of this sacrifice to idol stuff means anything when you remove it from the context of the idol's temple. You don't want to be seen sitting at meat in the idol's temple. And the same thing with blood. It's not that, there are some dishes that involve blood. Or sometimes meat has blood in it. It's not completely wringed out of the blood. We cook it, right? But I think there's something about with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof. And I said there's something about the pagan eating of blood or eating of flesh, of living flesh, and drinking of blood. You think about what they got up to with was it the Mayans or the Aztecs? The ones up on the top of the, I think it's going to be Aztecs, right? Yeah, I think so. Or the Mayans, whatever. Yeah, it was the Mayans. The ripping the hearts out of people, right? That kind of stuff. Ripping their hearts up, still beating hearts out and consuming the flesh thereof. That sort of, I'm not castigating them specifically, but that sort of religion, which has been around, believe me, the sacrificing and the eating the living, even with animals, consuming the living flesh, while it's still in its blood, so to speak, and not letting the life drain out. Like when I kill a chicken, I'm going to cut its head off and let the blood drain out. And then, but in the package of chicken, there's incidental blood. And we don't sweat that, right? Because we are not participating in blood drinking. Blood drinking, I could take a pragmatic side and say, look at bloodborne illness is a real deal. You should not drink blood. And what about cooked? It's we're talking the flesh in the life thereof, living blood, living flesh. And I do, so Paul, you're making a loophole for cooked. Well, I don't, they make some things with blood. I don't know. They'll talk about soups being blood, but it's you cook a lot of the things out of the animal. It's not eating blood. You know what I mean? I said, a lot of times we talk about like when we talk about Jesus, the eating the body and blood of Christ. You know, and in the Catholic traditions, they say, well, that's transubstantiation. It becomes literally his body. I'm like, well, it is symbolically truly his blood. I mean, in truth, if you said truly, I would agree. But when someone says literally, I'm like, you don't mean that it becomes the corpuscles of Christ. You know what I mean? Like literally it becomes his blood corpuscles and, you know what I mean? Or something like that. And of course, I'm not even sure if that's the doctrine, because it's been so long since I looked into it. And at the time, maybe I had a willingness to have an antagonist, to be, let's say, as least generous as possible, you know, because I don't think, because that to me seems to be like straining at a point. Like, does it really become, because it becomes like this miracle. They want it to be, because people crave miracles. I'm like, the miracle of our relationship with God, when you tap into it, when you live it out, as Noah did, as the fathers did, that's miracle. You will have your share of miracles. Don't look for some guy in a long robe to perform some sort of mystical act in front of you that's going to impress you. If that's the sort of thing you're looking for, you know, seek to the magicians and the sorcerers. They have all kinds of things to show you. And I mean that in the biblical sense of magicians and sorcerers. I mean like false teachers and liars and, you know, snake oil salesmen. They have all kinds of things. But every living thing is food. He talks about clean and unclean animals, but he says everything can be eaten, but the flesh with the life thereof you shall not eat. That's the only dietary restriction he puts on, outside of the covenant that comes later. That, as far as I can tell, I mean, maybe someone disagrees. Of course there's going to be people who disagree. But I think this is your baseline restriction, is like, do not, like, we consume things, right? It's a very important religious symbol. You know, there's so many things like Jesus says, nothing going into you can defile you, but that which cometh out of you. But at the same time, there are things we should not take in, right? Because why? Well, certain things, they go in and they come out the dearth. That means that it like as Jesus says, cleansing all meats. Actually, the way you should read that, according to some, is that thus he said cleansing all meats. But whatever. We know that also poisons can enter the body through the mouth, right? Of course. And we should not willingly put poison in ourselves, but we also have faith to understand that, you know, I when people get upset about the last few verses of Mark, I'm like, well, whether they belong there or not, I don't have a problem with them. The idea that we will drink poison and not, you know, it's no different than when Jesus talks about, if you have faith as the grain of a mustard seed, you will move mountains. Though we've never seen one actually accomplish this. I know it's true, because with a little bit of faith, I moved God. Moving a mountain would prove something to you about my faith, and it gets into this disgusting, like, self-elevating type stuff. Why would I desire such a thing? I do want to move mountains in a certain way. You know what I mean? Because I know there are mountains that need to be thrown into the sea. You know, right? But I don't know that that's necessarily our faith that's going to do that. But it's interesting that Jesus spoke of such things, and we see, those visuals in the trumpets and such. But the faith to move God, the faith that he would show himself to us. This is, you know, that God spoke to Noah and told him things, showed him things. That's miracle more than any, you know. And people want you to think, oh, you can't get close to that. You can't have that kind of relationship with God. That's bull. It's not reserved for the super ultra spiritual. It's like the relationship God has with each individual is equivalent. I mean, it's available. Meaning it's not necessarily we have the same relationship, but I would say the accessibility, the availability of how close we can draw to God is equivalent. Like if we draw near to him, he will draw near to us. And that's across the board. It's not, drawing near to him or seeking him out, in him seeking out is evidence of already, you will draw near him. If you desire these things, if they are in you, you have what it takes. That's what it takes. An honest, sincere, forthright desire that is not, defiled with self-promotion and arrogance. We gotta be humble. God prizes that. Anyway, so just as in the book of Acts, when he lowers the thing and says, "Rise, kill, and eat. I've given you all these things to eat." He says here to Noah that the restrictions that he gives to Israel, as he says at the time, you are a special nation. I am setting you out. There's a different thing going on there. When we get to those parts of the Bible, we will talk about that. And we will perhaps remember this. So again, just like in Acts, the blood is something, blood drinking, eating flesh with blood, somehow that the way we eat things, as we consume the body and blood of Christ, that's important. We do drink his blood. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. That blood drinking, that life taking, there's something about the perversion of the consumptive nature. You know what I mean? The predatory nature. The reveling in the destruction and the death and the consumption of another living thing. God at first gave them herbs. Angels, they have manna. The body and blood of Christ is offered to us metaphorically because it is his sacrifice, his life and death, and life forevermore after that truly gives us life. And we consume it to live every day. And so that it is also symbolic that nothing else should take that place of that, to drink the blood of something. Think about what that symbolizes. I drink up your life. There's almost, it's like I said, it's got a ceremonial aspect to take in the life of another. Because it's not really doing that, but it symbolizes that. That's why it's forbidden. It's not because there's pathogens in there. That's a happy accident. Maybe not such an accident, but it's a happy coincidence, let's say, that it's also forbidden. And that's true. People who drink a lot of blood are not going to be long-lived on this earth. I'm pretty sure of that. Because you're going to get sick, buddy. A lot of blood from a lot of different individuals, I promise you will get sick. Promise. That's no... that ain't no medical misinformation. Right? Tell me I'm lying, doctors, nurses, right? All right. There's a lot of good reasons not to drink blood pragmatically, but there's also spiritual reasons. And that's what I think really lays at the heart of this. Because the blood of Christ is our life. The body of Christ is our life. Not the blood of the animals and not the blood of others. We cannot ascend into heaven by drinking up the blood of our enemies. We can't ascend into heaven by drinking the blood of innocent victims, But people have sought this. Women, reputedly, it could be lies, but these are the kind of wicked thoughts that do enter into the hearts of men, that by bathing in the blood of virgins, they would, avert death or aging. To this day, women go to Korea, I believe, or to some other Southeast Asian country or Asian country. They go there to have the foreskins of little babies applied in some sort of bizarre treatment to their face to try to have youthful things because the cellular stem cells. You think, like, gosh, hey, there's a source of stem cells for you, foreskins, right? And people are throwing them away, right? Why not use that for more pertinent research? Why are they using it for such god-awful, Isaiah 4 Daughters of Zion type garbage, I mean, seriously. But, it shows the misplacing of priorities, I think. Because, if ever, oh, well, here we have, instead of saying, oh, let's get them from murdered fetuses, let's just take it from these throwaway things and use it for, and I'm sure they do research with it, whatever. It's gross, right? I don't know. It's not just, there's something, it's not that it's gross. There are some things like, you shall not boil a calf in its mother's milk. I mean, there are some things which psychologically there should be barriers because there's a moral component to it. There's a moral component to it. You don't boil a calf in its mother's milk. If you think, on the menu, you have calf boiled in its mother's milk, and that appeals to you, there's something wrong with you. If you find that appealing, there's something wrong with you. And that's what it's about. There's a moral component to what you take in. It doesn't of itself defile you. You know what I mean? That's why I say, a little blood in your meat isn't going to defile you. It's, when you're guzzling it down in the name of Molech or Baal or whatever purpose, or in your own name, trying to make yourself into some sort of God in that quest. Let's be like God. Come on, we got a good start here. We got the knowledge of good and evil. Let's continue along the path. What's next? Drink blood. Take in more life. Live forever by drinking the life of others. Just all these lies and myths that people will tell each other. Say, you will not surely die, but you will be like God, knowing both good and evil. You will take in the life of the other and inherit their strength and spirit. This is all the garbage these religions believed in different aspects. They thought, by eating the heart of this warrior, I will take in his strength. That's the perverse things they thought. By drinking the blood, I will take on the life and aspect of the eagle. I must drink the living blood with the life. After you kill the animal and let the blood drain out, to whatever degree. I mean, usually we drain the blood just because usually you don't want it to stain the meat, I guess. That's what they say. I mean, no one ever says it's the way you kill the animal. And it makes the butchering cleaner. Really, as far as I know. I don't know anyone who doesn't drain their blood. You have to collect it. If you want to eat the meat with the blood in it, you have to go out of your way. That's another thing, I would say. Or you're eating just putrefying flesh, which is just a bad idea. Like I said, it goes to the pragmatic side. But I don't think this is about pragmatism. Like I said, I try to avoid that. Because because that goes to that concrete world where, again, a lot of this doesn't make a lot of sense if we're too strict in following a particular way of a particular kind of perspective on the Bible. Assuming that what we have is to be read a certain way, and also that what we are reading is precisely what we think we're reading. Especially those times again. All right, fan's making noise. So before I go up and turn that fan off, I want to have something to say. So the blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of man. And at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man. And this could have been pronounced on day one, honestly. I mean, as far as it's always true. From the time of Adam's creation, when he made Adam in his image, this became, inevitable. That anyone who would touch another man, that shed his blood and take his life, an eye for an eye. It's sort of like, hey, you deserve the same thing. Because it's like you've taken something precious that as far as you can't restore it. Like I could take your ox for a good reason or a bad, right? Maybe I have a good reason. I'm coming along and suddenly my wife takes to labor and I got to rush her to someone who knows. So I borrow the ox, and I can restore it again. You know what I mean? Or let's say we're starving, I kill your ox and I eat it. But then I pay you because whatever. Or I restore it, I buy another one and restore it to you. as long as it wasn't your pet, or something, whatever. Some sort of restitution. What I'm saying, it's possible. It might be, I have violated your property rights, true. Right? And maybe restoration is not enough. Restoration plus. But the point is, I can do something. I can restore. If I have a breach with a person, I can go and mend the relationship. I can do a lot of things about it. When you murder someone, there's really nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do except die yourself. Give up your own life and go to the judge. Because can murder be forgiven? Yes. Of course, you can still enter into life. No murderer has eternal life in them. So, having murdered, you have a very short time with which to make your peace with God. And you should. And I think that a lot of times, how we behave once we're caught, it's going to bear a lot on how God's going to judge us. Do you accept your punishment? Whatever it is. Maybe it's not, I know not all, again, not all killing is the same. Sometimes there's a reason. Like I said, with Lamech, he had there's someone, maybe there's a fight and you kill someone. It's like, well, you own it to whatever degree you own it. You're sorry to what degree you're sorry. You pay the price to what you pay the price. Of course, you can be forgiven. Every sin which men shall commit, except the one Jesus said, there's one that won't be forgiven. And that was, that's one that often comes up. I have a special study on the unpardonable sin. I don't want to go into that here, but if you on oraclesofgod.org, that I put up there all the time on the special studies page, I did do an unpardonable sin one, right? Oh, I'm sure I did, because that's one of those frequently asked questions. It's number 25. The unpardonable sin. It's only 34 minutes, but that would extend this study beyond the scope we have available today, right? And that's not even in the text. But, well, it makes sense in the sense of like this, that, like I've said about this, that, look, you can have your sins forgiven, but that doesn't mean that you don't pay the natural consequences. You can be a Christian and be on your way to heaven and be guaranteed thus because you have faith in God from the foundation of the world has chosen you to this. But if you drink, you will pay consequences. It may include jail. And that's, and God is not going to necessarily protect us from all these things. He may, but if we take him for granted, there's nothing that says the natural consequences of going astray don't apply to you. That's why as Paul says, I keep my body under. That's an effort I make. I'm not saying I'm 100% successful, but that's the goal, 100%. 100% is the goal. Just so that's clear. Because some people act as if the goal is this. Whatever, 80, 50, 40. What is the goal? You know what I mean? Because here's the thing. While I was yet a sinner, Christ died for me and accepted me. So there's a lot of sin that he will put up with. Right? That's how it's manifest. And he forgives. But how much nonsense? How much bad faith? Not a lot, I'm telling you. Don't put up a lot of bad faith towards the Lord. Sins committed in innocence and also in, not just innocence, but sort of like the heat of passion. Control your passion. But he understands our frame. He knows we are but flesh. We are creatures ruled by common passions. But there's nothing that has come upon you that is not common to man, that you can't find a way to escape. The scriptures also say that. And that's what I take as my encouragement to say, okay, I'm going to shoot for 100% obedience. There's no other goal. If you think there's some goal under that that's appropriate for a Christian, you just tell me. And you show me where you think that's, the Bible says that's okay. Like I said, I'm not talking about saying it's okay to make mistakes. Of course it's okay to make mistakes. I'm telling you, when is it okay to set your eyes on some goal that is less lofty than the perfection that is Christ? Obviously. It's never acceptable because he is the only, that's why this blood shedding, the blood drinking thing, I think is part of it. Because the only blood you're allowed to drink is the blood of Jesus, brother. That's why. That's why blood is forbidden. Man sheds blood. it's so, and again, I'm saying that like from a Christian perspective. Obviously, is that there's others, the spirituality of this blood thing. It goes along all those lines. There's a lot to it, and the hand of every beast will require it. Well, again, I think we covered the beast. I don't know what more to say about that. The animals come after us, right? In the image of God made he man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man. You know what? The blood of your lives will I require at the hand of every beast, at the hand of man, at the hand of every man's brother, will I require the life of man. That's not just, you know, the vindictiveness. He's talking about the man is now, it's gonna be man, you know, brother against brother, even though that was from the beginning. Again, I guess we are promoting, not promoting, but what would I say? Like reiterating, like I said, what is kind of Cain says from the beginning. Whoever finds me is going to kill me. And God, I suppose in his pity for Cain, or in his mercy on Cain, because he has mercy on him in some respect, in that he prolongs his life. Just as he had mercy on Adam and did not have the sentence of death carried out. And this is only implicit, right? It's implicit. It's not explicitly laid out in the scriptures that he pardoned him in some sense. But in some sense, that the word is not literally fulfilled. In the day you eat thereof, you shall surely die. In interpreting that in the most rigorous way. If a day is as 1,000 years, you know, if that was, then truly he died in the day that he ate thereof. And in a sense that God wanted to give man more of a swing at it, then he'd let us fall and then let us falter and flail and live a life anyways. You know, but at some point that world became so corrupt that it could not no longer continue. And so now the world has been, certainly the world that was has perished. Right, that's what it's gone. And now there's a new world. And in that world, there would be violence again. Man, from beasts. God would set man on man. And require, because sometimes, here's the thing. You know, I was talking about the third that are destroyed in the book of Revelation. For the slay of the third part of men. Now, I'm not sure if that's them, and then 2/3. Yeah, I'm not sure, are they spared? Spared? The remnant were affrighted. That's the remnant of God. But the rest of the men, the rest of the men feared not God. Wait, why can't I bring the rest of that phrase? Oh. But basically, I'm thinking about in the vials, where in spite of being tormented by the plagues, I mean, these are people who are living at the very end, depending on how you sort out where these things occur. You know, to the end, there are those who stand defiant. And they're not killed during the tribulation. They're alive to the very end. The enemies. At least till Christ comes. And I don't know what fraction of humanity that represents. But man being made in the image of God, well, I think that's the main reason why the necessity. Like I said, you've taken something precious from someone who has something, you know, by being made in the image of God and by possessing this, like God has more sympathy with us than with other creatures. You know what I mean? And the fact, and even though he will allow the beasts to slay us and such, the beasts don't know better. But we know better. and that we would rise up against our brother is particularly abhorrent. Particularly abhorrent. And so, this Cain's sort of prophecy is now affirmed by the Lord himself as either you could take it as a prediction or as a prescription. It's not like with Cain where literally he had a mark set on him that was a proscription, meaning he was forbidden that he would be killed. That was the purpose of the mark, was to keep people from killing him. Whatever it was, what was the mark? I think it was something that Cain could point to and said, "This God marked me with this so that no one would slay me," and that they would fear enough to stay away. Or at least it would be known that the Lord had said so. And then Cain was marked so. Be fruitful, multiply, bring forth abundantly in the earth, and multiply. And then he says to Noah and his sons, I establish my covenant with you, and with your seed after you. Again, I said this goes into that aspect that, the covenant of what? Well, it's a redemptive covenant, right? That in spite of the destruction that comes because of sin, that God intends to save life, especially the lives of men, but also the lives of the beasts with them. And that the creation itself, as it is written in the book of Romans, groans and travails until now for the manifestation of the sons of God. He wants us to become sons of God. If the sons of God of Genesis 6 were just sons of God, falsely so called, or if they were actually angels who are not really the sons that God desires. That's another thing that I would say, is that if angels are the sons of God from our perspective, they're not truly the sons he has desired because he made man. And Paul seems to indicate that our final status will exceed that of the angels. And I do see where there is some, I don't know, it's a look, on some level I think some of my thoughts on that have been incorrect, because if I think about the nature of Satan, how much he is like us in some ways, I can't ascribe certain innocency to angels unless their innocence is so, I don't know, if there's something about, I don't know what differentiates, or why, having lived as flesh, we shall therefore exceed them in some ways. I mean, I could think of ways, but I can't say definitively. All right. With your seed, with every living creature. And then he talks about the rainbow. I will establish as the sign. Now, I do set my bow in the cloud. Sounds like it's like, I just did this now. But I think he's saying, it's not to be saying there was never a rainbow before this, but that it was set in the cloud for a token of the covenant between me and the earth. Meaning that did water previously diffract light? Probably. I don't see why it wouldn't. Because I don't think he's saying, I'm changing the laws of physics. You know what I mean? No, I think what he's saying is, you see the rainbow? Now I'm setting that for a token. Whenever you see that, now this is what it means. And again, some people suppose that it had not rained before the flood, like ever. And that I don't think I don't think that's required by the reading of the text. Again, because we have, the dew went up in the garden, but if Cain's a tiller of the ground later out of the garden and it's bringing forth thorn, I don't think that whole dew going up in the garden thing is going on everywhere else in the world. So for plants to grow, they need rain. I mean, outside of the garden, there's something, isn't there? There's mountains and trees. Or no, is there just a big flat plain because the earth is brand new and God didn't, or they're very regular features. They look like they were carved by hand as opposed to by, millions of years of plate tectonics. So I think this is a pronouncement of meaning behind the rainbow. Now God assigns it a meaning. It's never had a meaning before, so it was not mentioned. I don't think this is saying, oh, I created it after the flood. That's my opinion. I see how it could be easily read that way, but that's just it's presumptive to say that, because it's not the formula used when he does creation either. Doesn't say he made the rainbow. He said, I set it. It's a sign. Of course, set. It could be make also. I mean, I'm not going to, even if it was that word, it doesn't change the way you could think of that in the sense of like to make it a sign. And I'm just checking. Just because I tried to use the verb as a differentiation factor, I just want to make sure that wasn't a big mistake and then correct it right now before we quit. Because that would be potential error. Rainbow. There we go. I do set. Again, Nathan, to give. The word also used for gift, or it's the root of gift. So I'm giving it for that purpose. Not creating it new. But now I give it to you in the cloud as this. It is given as a token of the covenant. He's saying this natural feature now represents that. Just as like this, let this mountain be a witness between us. Did the mountain just show up? No, it was always there. Just now it's a witness. So that's how that works. It'll come to pass when I bring a cloud over the earth that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between. So we would know that he remembers. When you see that covenant, see that rainbow, it means that God remembers his covenant. It's not that he was going to forget it otherwise. It's always there. That's the point. As the rainbow's always there, not in every rainstorm, but in every event where you have the sun and the cloud and the water vapor in the proper alignment, it is always there. There's always that spectrum of light. And that is a perpetual covenant to remember that he would not destroy the world with a flood. And it's between him and every living creature. It is a promise of life and it's a promise of salvation. And I do connect it to what eventually comes to Abraham. Just as, why are these people tracked to Abraham? Why are they tracked from Adam? Why is it the specific line? We don't know who was firstborn in all those. We assume they're firstborns, but from the beginning they're not. And we also presume there's no gaps between generations. And we'll come up to a passage where I'm going to look into that again so I can be specific about that. Okay, so that's the token of the covenant. And so we will begin at verse 18 tomorrow. Yeah. That's good. We'll begin at verse 18, maybe go into chapter 10. So thanks for joining me. We'll look forward to being back again tomorrow. Until then, here's a little music.
The way of the just is straight, thou must upright dost weigh the path of the just day in the way of thy judgments, Yahweh, we have waited for thee. The longing of our soul is to thy name and to the remembrance of thee. With my soul have I desired thee in the night. Yea, with my spirit within me I will seek thee early. For when thy judgments are in the earth, the inhabitants of the world will learn righteousness.
A favor be shown to the wicked, yes, he